Chapter 1. The Mark of Fate. Agness ran her fingers over the tools laid out on the wooden table. A needle with a silver tip, vials of ink infused with wolfsbane and moon herbs, and fine scalpels for inscribing the most intricate patterns. Each object was painfully familiar, in the most literal sense. Her own skin bore the traces of her apprenticeship, thin lines on her wrists, where she'd learned to control the depth of the puncture, spirals on her shoulders, where she'd practiced the most complex sigils. Scar artist is what they called her in the northern pack, the tattooist whose marks could seal a werewolf's wolf spirit, robbing them of the ability to shift, making them ordinary humans. It was a gift and a curse. A gift because her skill was passed down the female line every few generations. A curse because she was forced to punish criminals by covering them with eternal marks, stripping them of what made a werewolf a werewolf. The door to her workshop slammed open. Agness didn't flinch. She had sensed their approach already. Her lupine senses warned her of the presence of several strong wolves, and the strongest among them radiated the aura of her father. Marcus North, the alpha of the northern pack, entered first. Tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair streaked with silver and eyes the color of a winter sky. 4 guards followed, dragging a bound man behind them. Agness looked up, and her heart skipped a beat. The prisoner was tall, even taller than her father. Dark hair fell over his face, obscuring his features, but it couldn't disguise the sheer power emanating from him, even through the silver chains. Silver burned werewolf skin, weakened them, but this man stood straight, as if the chains were nothing more than jewelry. When he lifted his head, Agness met his gaze, eyes the color of molten amber, burning with rage and pride. "Daughter!" Marcus's voice was measured, but Agness heard a triumphant note beneath it. "Before you stands Caiden the Wild, alpha of the Eastern Pack. He is accused of treason, of colluding with hunters, of betraying his kin." Agness shifted her gaze to her father. She knew Caiden the Wild by reputation, a young alpha who, at 25, had taken over the Eastern Pack after hunters had killed his father. He was known for his fury in battle, his stubbornness, his fierce loyalty to his pack. And he looked nothing like a traitor. "Treason?" she repeated, crossing her arms over her chest. Her fiery red hair, braided, fell over her shoulder, reflecting the candlelight in copper hues. "That's a serious accusation, Father. What evidence do you have?" The prisoner's amber eyes flicked to her in surprise. Clearly, he hadn't expected the daughter of his enemy to question her own father. "Evidence will be presented before the council," Marcus snapped. "Your task is to lay the seal so he cannot escape by shifting. A permanent mark, Agness. A permanent mark!" That meant stripping Caiden of his wolf forever, turning a powerful alpha into a mere man. Even if he was innocent, what the mark took could never be returned. Agness looked at the prisoner. Caiden glared at her with hatred, and she couldn't blame him. To him, she was the enemy's daughter, an instrument in Marcus North's hands. "I need to prepare," she said finally. "A mark like this takes time. Leave him here, under guard." Marcus frowned. "You've never needed time before." "I've never worked with an alpha before," Agness retorted, meeting her father's gaze. "His power is 10 times that of a normal werewolf. If I make a mistake, the mark could kill him, or me, or everyone in this room. You need a living prisoner for the trial, right?" It was true, though not the whole truth. Marcus studied her face a long moment, then nodded. "You have until tomorrow evening. The guards will stay at the door." After her father left, Agness approached the prisoner, The guards chained him to a heavy chair in the center of the workshop and left as well, taking up positions outside. Caiden looked at her with cold fury. "So you're the executioner they sent to break me." "I'm a scar artist," Agness replied, moving closer. "Not an executioner." "What's the difference?" There was bitterness in his voice. "You'll steal my spirit at your father's command. Then he'll grab my lands and destroy my pack." Agness crouched in front of him, studying his face. Even bound and weakened by silver, Caiden the Wild radiated power. Sharp features, obstinate jaw, a scar slicing across his left eyebrow. This was the face of a warrior, a leader, someone who didn't surrender. "Did you really betray your pack?" she asked quietly. His amber eyes blazed. "Never. I'd die before betraying my own." "I thought so." Agness stood and moved to the table, picking up one of the vials. Fiery red hair slipped loose from her braid, framing her face in gentle waves. "So my father set you up." Caiden froze. "You know?" "I'm not a fool, Caiden the Wild." Agness turned back, candlelight dancing in her green eyes. "My father has wanted the Eastern lands for a long time. You rejected his alliance. That wounded his pride. And now, here you are, accused of treason based on evidence that, I bet, appeared just a little too conveniently. And what are you going to do with that knowledge?" Caiden's voice softened, grew more dangerous. "You'll still mark me like the dutiful daughter?" Agness smirked, pain flickering in her eyes. "Do you know the worst thing about being a scar artist? It's not the pain I cause, not the weight of responsibility. It's that I have no choice. If I refuse, my father will find another way. He'll kill you, or have someone else lay a crude mark that turns you into a mindless beast." "Then what's the point of your words?" Caiden sounded disappointed. Agness moved toward him, holding the vial. "The point is, I can give you a chance, a temporary seal instead of a permanent one. It'll block your wolf for a week, no longer, but it'll have to be renewed." "Renewed?" Caiden frowned. "With a touch." Agness knelt in front of him, beginning to prepare her tools. "Once a week, I'll need to touch the seal to keep it alive. It's risky. If anyone finds out..." "Why are you doing this?" His words came out sharp. "I'm your father's enemy, your pack's enemy." Agness looked up at him. "Because justice built on lies isn't justice. And I can't steal an innocent man's spirit forever, even if he is my enemy. I have a conscience, Caiden the Wild, whether you believe it or not." She reached for his face, and Caiden instinctively recoiled. Agness gave a bitter smile. "Don't worry. I have to see your aura to make the mark right. It won't hurt. Not yet." When her fingers touched his temple, Caiden felt an odd warmth. Her green eyes began to glow softly, and he realized she was using her gift, seeing what was hidden from ordinary sight. "Your power is incredible," Agness whispered. "I've never seen anything like it. No wonder you became alpha so young." She withdrew her hand, flipping back her fiery hair, which in the candlelight looked like tongues of flame. "This will hurt. I'm sorry." "I've endured worse," Caiden snapped, but the tension in his body betrayed his readiness for pain. Agness picked up the needle with the silver tip and got to work. Chapter 2. The Pattern of Lies. The pain was fiery. The silver burned. The ink made from wolfsbane poisoned his blood, and every prick of the needle echoed with agony through every cell in Caiden's body. He clenched his teeth, determined not to scream, not to show weakness in front of the enemy's daughter. But Agness worked quickly and skillfully. Her fingers moved across his chest, over the skin stretched above his heart, drawing a complicated pattern of lines and runes. Sweat streamed down her forehead from intense focus. Her green eyes glowed as she wove power into every stroke. Her fiery red hair fell forward, forming a curtain between them and the rest of the world. "Almost done," she whispered. "Just a little more." Caiden could feel his wolf spirit thrashing against the cage the mark was building. The beast within him howled and clawed, trying to escape, but the pattern held fast. When Agness finished the final stroke, she leaned back, breathing heavily. Her hands trembled from exhaustion. Creating the mark drained not only her physical strength, but also her magic, pulling energy straight from her core. "Done," she breathed. "A temporary seal. It'll last a week, maybe a bit more if we're lucky." Caiden glanced down at his chest. Where only skin had been moments before, there now stretched an intricate pattern of black lines, forming something like a wolf trapped within a cage of runes. The mark pulsed with a dim light. "It looks real," he said hoarsely. "That's because it is real," Agness replied, struggling to her feet. "Just not permanent. But no one besides me can tell. Even another scar artist wouldn't notice unless they examined it closely." She walked to the table and poured herself a mug of water, drinking it greedily. Caiden watched her, trying to understand this strange girl. The daughter of his enemy, risking everything just to give him a chance. Her fiery red hair in the candlelight looked like living flame, a fitting symbol for the fire she carried in her soul. "Why?" he asked again. "The real reason." Agness turned to him, leaning against the table. "Because once, my father was a good man, just and kind. He taught me everything, how to tell truth from lies, how to protect the weak, how to be a worthy leader. And then—" She fell silent, pain flickering in her eyes. "What happened?" Caiden's voice softened despite himself. "My mother died 5 years ago. Hunters attacked our territory, and she defended the pack's children. She died shielding their escape." Agness swallowed hard. "After that, something broke in my father. He became obsessed with power, with expanding his territory, with destroying everyone he thought a threat. He's not the man I once knew." "But you still love him," Caiden observed. "He's my father," Agness said simply. "I can't just turn off that love, no matter how much he's changed. But I also can't stand by while he destroys the innocent." She stepped closer, her gaze turning serious. "Listen carefully. In a week, the seal will begin to weaken. I'll have to touch it to renew it. My father will keep you in the dungeons until the council's trial, which is in a month. Each week, he'll bring you to me for seal inspection. That's the only time I'll have to renew it." "A month," Caiden said with a humorless smirk. "A month in silver chains, weak and helpless, while my pack—" "Your pack is safe," Agness interrupted. "My father can't attack them openly without the council's approval. As long as the investigation is ongoing, the Eastern lands are protected by law. We have 1 month to find proof of your innocence." "We?" Caiden stared at her. "You think I'll just sit here, renewing the seal and doing nothing else?" Agness's old sharp tone crept back into her voice. "I'm not that useless. While you enjoy the hospitality of our dungeon, I'll be digging through my father's affairs, hunting for mistakes, looking for weaknesses in the accusations." "That's dangerous," Caiden said, surprise coloring his voice with concern. "If he finds out, then I'll be the next prisoner." Agness shrugged, tossing her fiery hair over her shoulder. "But I've learned to be careful. Suffering either breaks people or makes them stronger. I chose the latter." Before Caiden could answer, the door burst open. Marcus entered, his gaze immediately finding the seal on the prisoner's chest. "Is it done?" "Yes," Agness responded, stepping away from Caiden. Her face became an impassive mask. The permanent mark is in place. His wolf spirit is sealed. But I recommend weekly inspections to ensure the seal holds. He's an alpha. His strength could resist the limitations. Marcus nodded, satisfied. Good work, daughter. Guards, take the prisoner to the dungeon. Do not remove the silver chains. As the guards lifted Caiden, his gaze met Agness's. There was still anger in those amber eyes, but now something else too, a glimmer of understanding, maybe even gratitude. Until next time, Agness said formally. Until next time, scar artist. He replied in the same tone, but the last words held something personal, meant only for her. Once he was gone, Marcus lingered, studying his daughter. You're pale. The ceiling was hard on you. I was working with an alpha, father. Agness allowed the exhaustion into her voice. His power fought the seal all the way, but it's holding. He won't be able to shift. Good. Marcus stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. You serve the pack with honor, Agness. Your mother would be proud of you. Agness closed her eyes, fighting back emotion. Any mention of her mother was always painful, especially from the man who had betrayed everything she taught. Thank you, father, she whispered. When Marcus left, Agness sank into the chair Caiden had occupied just minutes before. Her hands were still trembling, but not from exhaustion, from fear of what she had started, from the knowledge that now her life and Caiden the Wild's were bound together by an invisible thread of magic and deceit. What have I done? She whispered into the emptiness of her workshop. No answer came, only silence and the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows across the walls. Chapter 3. Bonds of Distrust. The prison of the Northern Pack lay deep underground, its silver bars reinforced with ancient magic. Caiden was thrown into the furthest cell, silver shackles clamped tight around his wrists and ankles. The metal burned his flesh, weakening him a little more with every passing hour. He lay on the cold stone floor, staring into the darkness, thinking about the strange girl who had risked everything for him. Agness North, the enemy's daughter, the scar artist. She had beautiful eyes, he thought, and immediately chastised himself for it. This was hardly the time to be thinking of looks. Her eyes were green as the spring woods, with steel hidden behind their kindness. He had seen that steel when she stood up to her father and when she chose to help him. And that fiery red hair, blazing in candlelight, as if her very soul burned with the same bright flame. She's risking her life for someone she doesn't even know. The thought wouldn't leave him alone. Caiden was used to a world where everyone did things for their own benefit, where the strong won and the weak submitted. Agness didn't fit in that picture. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Caiden sat up, preparing for yet another interrogation. But instead of Marcus or his guards, a slim, hooded figure appeared. Quiet, came a familiar voice as Agness pulled back her hood. Her hair tumbled loose across her shoulders, a vivid splash of color in the dim prison. She carried a small basket in her hands. What are you doing here? Caiden hissed, glancing around quickly. If they catch you. The guards think I'm here to make sure the seal hasn't been tampered with. Agness kneeled by the bars, fishing out a flask and a bundle from the basket. My father is obsessed with keeping you locked up. I convinced him daily checks are necessary for the first week. She pushed the flask through the bars. Drink. It's an herbal infusion. It'll help lessen the effects of the silver. Caiden took the flask, their fingers brushing, and he felt a strange tingling. Magic? Or something else? Why are you helping me? He asked after a sip. The bitter taste of the herbs burned his throat, but the pain from the silver eased almost immediately. "I've already told you." "No," Caiden interrupted. "You said you couldn't take an innocent spirit away. But there's something else. Something you're not saying." Agness was silent a long moment, looking down at her hands. 3 years ago, we had a werewolf from a neighboring pack brought in. He was accused of murder. The evidence was convincing. My father ordered me to place a permanent seal, and I did. She looked up, pain shining in her eyes. A week later, they discovered the real killer was the son of one of my father's counselors. The evidence had been faked, but it was already too late. The seal can't be removed. That werewolf, he took his own life a month later. He couldn't live without his wolf half. "And you blame yourself," Caiden said softly. "I should have checked. I should have looked deeper. Instead, I just followed orders," Agness said, her voice shaking. "Since that day, I swore I would never again place a permanent seal without absolute certainty of guilt. And when my father brought you, I knew right away it was a lie. He wouldn't be so triumphant if the charges were real." Caiden reached through the bars and, to his own surprise, brushed her cheek with his hand. Agness froze, staring at him wide-eyed. "That death isn't on your conscience. You couldn't have known." "But I do now," she whispered, "and I won't let it happen again." They gazed at each other in the faint torchlight, and something shifted in the air between them, an invisible bond that had nothing to do with magic. Agness looked away first. "I've started digging through my father's paperwork. He keeps a journal where he notes every important decision. If he set you up, the evidence will be there." "That's insanely dangerous." Caiden withdrew his hand. "If he finds out, then make sure my risk wasn't in vain," Agness shot back, fire flaring in her eyes. "Survive, Alpha. Don't let the silver break you, because I have no intention of losing this fight." She stood to go, but Caiden stopped her. "Agness." She turned, surprise flickering at hearing her name from him. "Thank you," he said simply. A faint smile touched her lips. "Don't thank me yet. There are still 3 weeks to go, and any of them could be our last." When she left, her red hair flashed for a moment in the torchlight around the corner. A last lick of flame before the dark. Caiden leaned back against the cold stone wall. The seal on his chest throbbed with a faint warmth, a reminder of her touch and the risk she'd taken. Agness North. Her name spun in his mind, refusing to leave. The enemy's daughter. His only hope, and possibly something more, though he was afraid to even put it into words. The next days blurred into agonizing monotony. Interrogations, where Marcus tried to force a confession. Long hours in the darkness of his cell. The pain of the silver, eased only partially by Agnes's herbs. She visited daily, always under the pretense of checking the seal. Sometimes they whispered, exchanging news. Agness told him what she found in her father's papers, vague mentions of the Eastern question, correspondence with someone he called only our friend on the council. "He has an ally on the council," she reported during one visit. "Someone who'll help push the charges against you." "The council isn't a single block," Caiden muttered, shifting to ease the agony on his wrists raw from the silver cuffs. "There are factions, traditionalists who cling to the old ways, progressives who want to blend with the human world, and opportunists who just want power." "Which group did your father belong to?" Agness asked, smoothing the ointment on his wounds through the bars. "The traditionalists," Caiden answered. "He believed werewolves should stay apart, keep their ways. That's one reason hunters killed him. He refused the deal they offered. What deal? Territorial truce in exchange for betraying the other packs. Caiden's voice turned hard. He sent them to hell. A week later, they found him dead with a silver arrow in his heart. Agness hesitated, her fingers still resting on his wrist. I'm sorry. Don't be, Caiden snapped, but there was no real anger left in his tone. He died with honor, for what he believed. That's all a werewolf can hope for. It's not all, Agness said softly. You can hope the world is better because you lived, that your life meant something. Caiden studied her, the slender girl with fire in her eyes, steel in her voice, hair like flame, courage in her heart. You really believe that? After all you've seen? I have to, she replied. Otherwise, what's the point? Before he could answer, footsteps approached. Agness quickly stashed the ointment and stepped away, her expression going cold and professional. A guard appeared. Lady Agness, your father needs you. I'm coming. She nodded, then turned briefly to Caiden. The seal is holding steady. Next check is in 2 days. As she left, Caiden noticed the tension in her shoulders. Something was wrong. He found out 2 hours later, when Marcus himself descended into the dungeon, a smug smile on his face. Good news, Alpha Wild, Marcus declared. The council has agreed to expedite the hearing. Your trial is in a week, not a month. A week? They had only a week left to find proof and form an escape. You look upset. Marcus tilted his head. Thought you'd be glad to move things along. Or were you hoping for a miracle? Caiden stayed silent, determined not to give his enemy any satisfaction. There are no miracles, Marcus went on. There's only strength, and those who know how to use it. Your lands will soon be mine. Your pack will swear loyalty or be destroyed. And you'll spend the rest of your days in exile, stripped of everything that made you alpha. He turned to go, then paused. Oh yes, my daughter won't be coming to check the seal anymore. I've decided it's inappropriate. The next time you see her will be in the council chamber, when she testifies the seal is properly placed. When Marcus was gone, Caiden slammed his fist into the stone wall, ignoring the pain. A week. Just 1 week, and the seal would start to weaken. Without Agness, without a way to renew it, he'd be helpless come the trial. She'll think of something, he told himself. She's clever, resourceful. But cold fear twisted his heart. Because for the first time in years, Caiden Wild felt truly powerless. And worst of all, it wasn't just for himself he was afraid anymore. He feared for Agness, the desperate risks she might take, the dangers she'd face. When did she come to mean so much? He asked himself in the cell's darkness. But he already knew the answer. From the very moment her green eyes met his amber ones, and he saw not judgment, but understanding. From the moment she chose conscience over duty, risking all for a stranger. From that moment, something had changed. And now, in darkness and pain, Caiden realized what it was. He was falling for the daughter of his enemy. Chapter 4, Forbidden Touch. Agness sat in her room, staring at the closed door. Her father had forbidden her from visiting the dungeon. On top of that, he had assigned a guard to her, for protection, as he'd said. But Agness wasn't foolish. It was surveillance, not protection. She walked to the window and gazed at the night sky. A full moon hung above the castle, its call tugging at her wolf spirit. On nights like this, werewolves traditionally hunted in their animal forms, feeling the most alive. Agness unbraided her hair, letting it fall freely across her shoulders. But Caiden was locked underground, robbed of the chance to shift. Was he suffering now? Was his wolf spirit fighting the seal, trying to break free in the full moon? I have to see him. The decision came suddenly, but Agness knew she wouldn't change her mind. The seal needed to be checked. That was true. But even more, she needed to be sure he was all right. She opened her door. The guard, a young werewolf named Ralph, snapped to attention. "Lady Agness, do you need something?" "Yes." Agness took a deep breath. "I need to go to the workshop. There's an important ingredient I forgot there, and it can't be left exposed to the air for too long." Ralph frowned. "It's the middle of the night." "That's exactly why I remembered," Agness replied with feigned annoyance. "Look, you can come with me if you're so worried, but I have to get that vial, or the ingredient will spoil, and it costs more than you make in a year." Ralph hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but quickly." They went down to the workshop. Agness lit some candles and began rummaging through vials, pretending to search for something specific. Ralph stood at the door, yawning. "Ralph?" she called after a few minutes. "Can you help? I need a box from the upper shelf." When he came over, Agness quickly snatched a small pouch of powder and blew it in his face. Ralph inhaled instinctively, his eyes widened, and then rolled back. He started to fall, and Agness barely caught him in time to keep him from hitting his head. "Sorry," she whispered, checking his pulse. The sleeping powder was strong, but not dangerous. He would sleep for a few hours. Agness changed quickly into dark clothes and pulled up her hood, hiding her bright hair that could have betrayed her in the darkness. She grabbed a small bag of instruments and headed for the dungeon. The castle corridors were nearly empty. On the full moon, most of the pack was out hunting in the woods. Agness moved like a shadow, avoiding patrols, using all the secret passages she'd learned over her years in the castle. The dungeon was guarded by 2 warriors, Greg and Thomas. She knew them both, experienced fighters, but not too bright. "Seal check," she announced, stepping out of the shadows and pushing back her hood. Both guards jumped in surprise. "Lady Agness?" Greg frowned. "Alpha said you weren't to come anymore?" "Alpha also said the seal must remain stable." Agness cut in with an icy tone she'd long since perfected from her father. "It's the full moon tonight. The prisoner's wolf side will be fighting harder than ever. If the seal fails and he transforms, that'll be on your conscience. Do you want to explain to Alpha how you lost our most dangerous prisoner?" The guards exchanged glances. Agnes's logic was airtight, and they knew just how paranoid Marcus was about Caiden breaking free. "Fine," Thomas said at last. "But we're coming in with you." "As you wish." Agness nodded, hiding her relief. They went down to the cells. Caiden was on the floor of his cell, body tense, breathing ragged. When Agness approached, he opened his eyes, amber, glowing in the darkness. "Agness." His voice was rough. "What are you doing here?" "Seal check," she replied in a formal tone for the guards, but her eyes told a different story. "The full moon amplifies your wolf side. I need to make sure you can't shift." She nodded to the guards. "Open the cell. I need physical access to the seal." Greg opened the cell, keeping his silver-tipped spear ready. Agness stepped inside and knelt by Caiden. His shirt had been torn off during one of the interrogations, and the mark was bare to see, black lines on tanned skin, pulsing with a faint light. "Show me," she whispered. Caiden, moving with difficulty, sat up. Agness placed her hand on the seal, and they both felt it. The heat, not magical, but painfully real. Her palm rested on his chest, directly over his heart, and she felt it pounding hard and fast. "Focus," she ordered herself. She closed her eyes, letting her gift see what was hidden beneath. The seal was holding, but only barely. Caiden's wolf spirit was battering the walls, especially vicious on the full moon. Another day or two, and the seal would begin to crack. "It needs to be renewed," she muttered, loudly enough for the guards to hear, as if to herself. She traced the lines of the seal with her fingers, pouring strength into them. Caiden shivered under her touch. Agness glanced up and met his eyes. Amber flames burning within, but was that the beast raging against its cage, or something else entirely? "Hold on," she murmured, so softly that only he could hear. "Just a little longer." Her fingers moved over his skin, renewing the runes, reinforcing the lines. It was intimate, more so than it should have been. Each touch resonated deep in her own chest, as if an invisible thread stretched between them. "What's happening?" Agness wondered at the strange sensations. It was more than the magic of the seal. It was something personal, something that made her heart race. "Done," she said at last, pulling her hand away, but her fingers lingered a second longer than strictly necessary, and Caiden noticed. "Agness," he began. "The seal is holding," she said more loudly, rising to her feet. "But I'll need to check again in 3 days. The full moon has increased his resistance." She turned to the guards. "Make sure he's fed. Starvation will weaken his will and could destabilize the seal. If it breaks, he'll kill both of you before you even blink." The threat worked. The guards nodded solemnly. As Agness left the cell, Caiden called out, "Scar artist." She turned. "Thank you for caring for the seal," he said formally, but his eyes said, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for risking everything." Agness nodded. "Just doing my job, Alpha Wild." But as she ascended the dungeon stairs, her hand still tingled where she'd touched his skin, and her heart pounded in a way it never should have. "This is dangerous," she thought. "Not just because of Father. What's dangerous is what I'm starting to feel." Because somewhere between their first meeting and this night, Caiden Wild had stopped being just a prisoner she was helping. He had become someone important, someone whose pain resonated within her, someone whose touch set her veins on fire. "I'm falling for him." The realization stopped Agness in the middle of the hallway. "I'm falling for my father's enemy, for a man who could ruin my family, for someone who could never forgive me for being Marcus North's daughter." But even knowing all that, she already understood it was far too late to stop. Back in his cell, Caiden leaned his head against the wall, closing his eyes. His chest still held the warmth of her touch. The seal thrummed in even pulses, pacified by her power, but beneath it, his heart beat wild. Agness. He no longer saw her as the enemy's daughter. Somewhere between interrogations and pain, between secret visits and her care, she had simply become Agness. The girl with a steely spirit and a kind heart. The woman I can't get out of my head. It was madness. They were on opposite sides of the war. Even if he survived, even if he proved his innocence, then what? Her father would still be his enemy. Their packs would remain rivals. But when she touched him tonight, when her green eyes held such worry and care, nothing else mattered in that moment. "Damn," Caiden muttered into the darkness. "I'm in love with her." And that made everything even more dangerous, because now he had something to lose besides his own life. Now he was afraid not just for himself, but for the fragile girl who had risked everything for him. Outside, the moon continued to shine, cold and indifferent to the troubles of mortals and werewolves alike. And in the dark of the dungeon, 2 hearts beat in unison, bound not only by the magic of the seal, but by something much more perilous, a love that never should have existed. Chapter 5. Secrets and Revelations. Agness returned to her room, carefully locking the door behind her. Ralph was still asleep in the workshop. She had time before anyone grew suspicious. She walked over to the window, gazing up at the moon, lost in thought. What am I doing? She was falling in love. Despite every rational argument, despite the danger, despite the fact that it could destroy her relationship with her father, she was falling for Caiden Wild. A gentle knock at the door made her jump. Agness quickly undressed, pulled on her nightgown, and mussed up her hair to look as though she'd been sleeping. Only then did she open the door. Her father stood on the threshold. "Father?" Agness feigned sleepy surprise. "Is something wrong?" Marcus entered the room, his eyes scanning her and then the room itself as if searching for something suspicious. "Where is Ralph?" "Ralph?" Agness frowned. "He should be outside. I was sleeping." That was true. At least, partly. Marcus walked over to the window, looking at the moon. "The trial will take place in a week. You'll need to testify that the seal was properly and permanently set." "I understand, Father." Agness folded her arms across her chest. "But the seal needs to be checked. He's an alpha. His strength fights the restraints, especially during the full moon." Marcus turned to her. "I forbade you from visiting the dungeon." "You forbade me to spend time with him," Agness corrected, meeting his gaze. "But you don't want the seal to break, do you? If he turns and escapes, all your plans will fall apart." Marcus stared at her for a long time, and Agness forced herself not to look away. At last, he nodded. "You're right, but any checks will be carried out in the presence of guards, and only when necessary." "Of course, Father." Marcus stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're a good daughter, Agness. Your mother would have been proud of you. Soon, the Northern Pack will be the strongest, and it's all for our future. For your future." Agness forced herself to smile. "I know, Father." When he left, she collapsed onto her bed, shaking. Lying to her father was getting harder with every day. Every time she looked him in the eye and deceived him, a part of her soul darkened. "But Caiden is innocent," she reminded herself. "I'm doing the right thing." She went to her desk and pulled out hidden papers, copies of pages from her father's journal that she'd secretly written out over the last few days. There were mentions of the Eastern problem, the need to act decisively, and an ally on the council who will ensure the right outcome. But no name of the ally. Her father was too cautious for that. Agness sat down, lit a candle, and started going through the records again. There had to be a clue here, something to help. A tap at the window made her jump. When Agness turned, she saw a large raven perched on the sill, holding a rolled-up note in its beak. Werewolves could communicate with certain animals. It was one of their gifts. Agness opened the window, and the raven hopped in, offering the note. "Thank you," she whispered as she took the slip. The raven cawed and flew off into the night. Agness unrolled the note, and her heart began to race. "The Eastern Pack knows their alpha is captured. They're preparing a rescue. Be careful. A friend." A rescue operation. Caiden's pack was coming for him. This could change everything, or make things even worse. Agness quickly walked to the fireplace and tossed the note in, watching as it turned to ash. Then she returned to her desk, mind racing. If Caiden's pack tried to rescue him, it would only give her father proof that they were dangerous, that a hard line was needed. It could trigger a war between the packs. "I have to warn Caiden. He has to stop them." But how? Her father had reinforced the guards after her nighttime visit. Getting into the dungeon again would be nearly impossible. Almost. The next day, Agness asked for an audience with her father. Marcus received her in his study, surrounded by maps and documents. "What do you need, daughter?" "I want to do another seal inspection," Agness said. "Tonight is the last night of the full moon. The moon's influence will be at its peak. If the seal withstands tonight, it will hold until the trial." Marcus frowned. "Are you sure it's necessary? Do you want to take the risk?" Agness raised an eyebrow. "If he breaks the seal and shifts during the trial, it will be a catastrophe. The council will think we're incompetent, or that the charges are a lie if we can't even keep the prisoner contained." The logic was flawless, and Marcus knew it. He sighed. "Very well, but you'll take 4 guards, and be quick." "Thank you, Father." The dungeon greeted them with chill and damp. 4 guards followed close behind Agness, hands on their silver sword hilts. Caiden was lying in his cell, but rose when he heard approaching steps. His gaze met Agnes's, and she saw in his amber eyes surprise, and then something warm that made her heart clench. "Seal inspection," she announced to the guards. "Open the cell." When the grate swung open, Agness stepped inside. Caiden stood in the center, tense. Silver shackles left red marks on his wrists. "Show me the seal," she said in an official tone. Caiden stepped nearer. Agness placed her hand on his chest, feeling the heat of his skin beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes, pretending to inspect the seal, but whispering so quietly only he could hear. "Your pack is planning a rescue. You must stop them. It will play right into my father's hands." Caiden froze, but gave no sign he'd heard anything important. His hand slowly rose, as if to adjust himself for better access to the seal, but in reality his fingers brushed her wrist, a soft, warm touch. "How?" he whispered, just as quietly. "I'll send a raven. Right to your pack. Order them to wait." Agness traced her fingers over the seal's lines, renewing its power. "We have a plan. Trust me." "We?" Caiden echoed, and something in his voice made Agness look up into his eyes. "We," she confirmed, and for a moment a spark of understanding passed between them. A bond stronger than any magic. Caiden's fingers squeezed her wrist slightly. "Agness, if something goes wrong—" "It won't," she interrupted, though she didn't believe it herself. "Just trust me." "I do," Caiden whispered, and in those 2 words was so much weight, so much meaning that Agnes's breath caught in her throat. One of the guards coughed. "Lady Agness, are you finished?" Agness quickly stepped back, breaking the contact. "Yes, the seal is stable. It will hold until the trial." As they left the dungeon, Agness could feel Caiden's gaze on her back, and even without turning, she knew the same flame was burning in his amber eyes as in her own heart. That night, Agness sat at her desk, bent over a sheet of parchment. She wrote a short message in Caiden's name. "To my pack. Do not attempt a rescue. It's a trap. Wait for my signal. Your Alpha." She rolled up the note and went to the window. Within minutes, the same raven landed on the sill. Agness tied the message to its leg. "Take this to the Eastern Lands. Find Caiden the Wild's beta. It's important." The raven cawed and soared off into the night. Agness went back to her desk and pored over her father's notes again. The hours crawled by, the candle burned down, and her eyes started to close from exhaustion. But she kept searching, until finally, as dawn began to paint the sky with soft pink hues, she found it. A small note in the margin of a page, written in nearly illegible script. "L agreed. The arrangement is made. The East will fall." L, someone on the council whose name started with L. Agness, quickly ran through the council members in her mind. There were 12, but only 3 with names beginning with L: Lauren Gray, Lucas Swift, and Liza Wise. Lauren was too old and conservative for intrigue. Liza was known for her honesty. That left Lucas Swift, an ambitious young alpha from the Western Pack, famed for his hunger for power. Lucas. Agness leaned back in her chair, mind racing. If she was right, then Lucas and her father had conspired against Caiden. But how to prove it? She glanced at the window, where dawn was breaking. I have 6 days, she thought. 6 days to find evidence, save an innocent man, and not betray my father completely. 6 days to change fate. And somewhere deep inside, in that place where her most secret thoughts lived, a voice whispered, 6 days to understand what it means to fall for someone who should have been your enemy. Chapter 6. Games and Manipulations. The council gathered in the great hall on neutral ground between the packs. Agness had never attended such meetings before, but her father had brought her to this preliminary gathering, where the details of the coming trial would be discussed. Remember, Marcus whispered to her as they walked down the corridor. You are here as an expert. The scar artist whose seal prevents a dangerous criminal from escaping? Only speak when spoken to. Be polite and professional. I understand, Father. Agness nodded, but her attention was drawn to a tall figure standing by one of the windows. Lucas Swift was handsome, there was no denying it. Tall and athletic, with dark blonde hair and sharp gray eyes. He turned as they entered, and his gaze lingered on Agness a moment longer than necessary. Marcus, he greeted, coming forward. And this must be your daughter, the famous scar artist. Lucas. Marcus shook hands with him. Yes, this is Agness. Daughter, this is Lucas Swift, alpha of the Western Pack and a member of the council. Agness offered her hand, and Lucas brought it to his lips, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy. Enchanted. I've heard much about your talents. You're too kind. Agness gently freed her hand, suppressing the urge to wipe it on her dress. There was something about Lucas that triggered instinctive disgust. Other council members began arriving. Agness watched them, trying to sense who could be an ally and who a threat. Lauren Gray, the eldest council member, greeted her kindly. Liza Wise, a middle-aged woman with a perceptive gaze, studied her closely. Scar artist? Liza said, approaching. A rare gift. I knew your grandmother. She was a remarkable master. Thank you, Lady Liza. Agness felt a warmth toward the woman. I strive to be worthy of her legacy. I'm sure you are more than worthy. Liza smiled, but something sharp flickered in her eyes, as if she saw more than Agness was revealing. The session began. Council members sat around a large round table, symbolizing equality among the packs. Marcus stood to present the case. Honored members of the council, I accuse Caiden Wild, alpha of the Eastern Pack, of treason against our kind, of collusion with the hunters, of betrayal that cost the lives of several of our brethren. A ripple of whispers moved through the hall. Treason was the most serious of all werewolf crimes. What evidence do you have? Asked Lauren Gray. Marcus nodded to an aide who spread documents on the table. Correspondence between Caiden Wild and the hunter's leader, Darius Iron. Letters discussing the handover of pack locations in exchange for the safety of the eastern lands. Agness tensed. She had never seen these letters before. Where did they come from? Liza Wise picked up one of the letters, studying it. These are serious accusations, but how can we be sure the letters are genuine? The handwriting was verified, Lucas interjected. I personally conducted the investigation. The letters are authentic. Of course you did, Agness thought bitterly. Because you're part of this plot. I would like to hear from the accused himself, said Lauren. Where is Caiden Wild? Why is he not here to defend himself? He is under heavy guard in the dungeon, Marcus replied. He bears the scar artist's seal, which keeps him from transforming and escaping. We could not risk bringing him here before the trial. His strength is too great. Nevertheless, Liza looked at Marcus. Everyone has the right to speak in their own defense, even one accused of treason. And he will have that chance, assured Marcus. At the trial, which is in 6 days, today we are only setting procedures. The discussion continued for another hour. Agness listened, making mental notes. She noticed Lucas exchanging several fleeting, almost imperceptible glances with her father. They really are working together. As the session was ending, Liza addressed Agness. Scar artist, I have a question. The seal you placed on Caiden Wild, is it permanent? Agness felt all eyes turn to her. This was a critical moment. If she told the truth, everything would collapse. If she lied, she might save Caiden but deceive the council. Yes, Lady Liza, she said, meeting the older woman's gaze. A permanent seal. His wolf nature is locked away forever. Liza stared at her a long moment, and Agness felt the older wolf's piercing eyes as if they were reading straight through her soul. Interesting, Liza finally said. Because permanent seals usually don't require weekly inspections, which I hear you have been conducting. Agnes's heart skipped a beat. She knows, or at least suspects. He is an alpha. Agness kept her voice steady and professional. His strength is unusual. I wanted to make sure the seal was holding under the pressure of his wolf nature. It's just a precaution, nothing more. I see. Liza nodded, but the glint in her eyes showed she was far from satisfied. Thank you for clarifying. When the council session ended, Agness felt a wave of relief, but it didn't last long. As they left the hall, Lucas approached. Lady Agness, may I steal a moment of your time? Agness glanced at her father, who nodded. I'll wait for you by the carriage. Left alone in the corridor, Lucas smiled, a charming smile that never reached his eyes. You made quite an impression on the council. Young, beautiful, talented. His gaze flicked over her fiery red hair. And with such a rare gift. You're too kind. Agness kept her distance. I only speak the truth. Lucas moved closer. You know, when the trial is over and the eastern lands are annexed by the north, your father will be extremely powerful, and you, as his daughter, will be a very desirable match. A chill went down Agnes's spine. I have not given marriage any thought, Lord Lucas. Perhaps it's time you did. His tone softened, turned dangerous. A union between the West and the North would make us invincible. And you'd be queen among our people. He reached out, as if to touch her cheek, but Agness stepped back. That is a matter to be discussed between alphas, if at all. Not here. Not like this. Lucas frowned, but quickly masked his irritation with a smile. Of course. Forgive me if I was too forward. Sometimes beauty overrides manners. He bowed and left her trembling with anger and disgust. He wants to marry me, to secure his alliance with my father. The thought was revolting. Worse still was the realization that if her father's plan succeeded, if Caiden was found guilty and the eastern lands absorbed by the north, her father might very well agree to such a union. I have to stop this, at any cost. That night, Agness slipped once more into the dungeon. This time, she used a different route, a secret passage only she knew, leading straight to the cells. Caiden was awake when she arrived, sitting by the wall, his amber eyes glowing in the dark. Agness, he whispered. What are you doing here? This is too dangerous. I had to see you. She approached the bars. The council met today. Caiden, they have letters, correspondence between you and the hunters. What? Caiden jumped to his feet. That's impossible. I know. Agness thrust her hand through the bars, and Caiden took it, their fingers intertwining. They're forged. Lucas Swift confirmed their authenticity. He's conspiring with my father. Caiden's grip tightened. Lucas, I should have guessed. He always wanted more influence in the council. My father blocked many of his plans. There's more. Agness swallowed. Lucas proposed marriage, after the trial, to seal an alliance between our packs. Something flared in Caiden's amber eyes. Rage, jealousy, hurt. And what did you say? Nothing, yet. Agness met his eyes. But my father could agree, if his plan works. Then we won't let his plan work. Caiden's voice grew steely. Agness, I won't let you marry that snake. That's not your decision, she replied softly, but her heart pounded at his words, at the fire in his eyes. Maybe not. Caiden pulled her closer to the bars as far as his chains would allow. But I'll fight for you, even from this cursed cell. They stood like that, faces just inches apart, separated by iron bars. Agness could feel his breath on her skin, see the tension in his muscles, the desire he fought to control. Caiden, she whispered. We can't. I know. His voice was rough, but it doesn't change how I feel. And how do you feel? Agness almost feared the answer. Caiden brought their entwined hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles, softly, almost reverently. I'm in love with you, Agness North, daughter of my enemy, the girl with fire in her hair and courage in her heart. I'm in love, and it's madness, and it might kill us both, but I can't stop. Tears pricked Agnes's eyes. She freed her hand and reached between the bars to touch his face. And I love you. I don't know how it happened, but between that first time I saw you and this very moment, you became everything to me. Caiden turned to kiss her palm. What do we do? We fight. Agness forced herself to step back before she acted on impulse. We have 6 days. I'll find a way to prove the letters are fake. I'll find real evidence of the plot, and then... And then? Caiden gazed at her with hope in his eyes. Then we'll be free, Agness whispered. Both of us, and no one will ever say we can't be together. She stepped away from the bars. Hold on, Caiden. Just a little longer. I promise I'll get you out of here. Agness, he called as she was about to slip away. Be careful. Lucas is dangerous. If he realizes you're against him, I'll be careful, she promised. And you take care of yourself. Don't provoke the guards. Don't give my father any excuse to hurt you more. As she vanished into the darkness of the secret passage, Caiden sank to the floor, leaning against the wall. His chest, where the seal pulsed, burned, not from magic, but from the memory of her touch. She loves me. The thought warmed him more than any fire, and I will not let her down. Not now, not with so much at stake. Chapter 7. Uncovering the Conspiracy. For the next 3 days, Agness worked tirelessly. She pored over every document she could find in her father's study, searching for any clue that could unravel the conspiracy. On the 4th day, she found what she was looking for. Hidden deep in her father's safe, beneath a stack of old contracts, was a small notebook. Agness opened it with trembling hands and began to read. It was a journal of negotiations between her father and Lucas. Detailed descriptions of how they plotted to frame Caiden, how Lucas had hired a forger to create the fake letters, how they had bribed a witness to testify that he'd seen Caiden meeting with the hunters. Everything was there. Every detail of the plot, written in her father's own hand. Why would he keep this? Agness wondered. It's evidence of his guilt. Then she realized it was insurance. If Lucas ever decided to betray Marcus, Marcus would have proof that the Alpha of the West was just as much a part of the conspiracy. Agness quickly made copies of the most important pages, using special paper that absorbed ink from the original on contact, a trick her grandmother had taught her. When she finished, she carefully replaced the notebook and locked the safe. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline and fear. I have the evidence. Now I need to figure out how to use it. She couldn't just go to the council. Her father was a respected alpha, Lucas an influential council member. Her word against theirs, a young woman against two powerful men. Who would believe her? Liza, Agness thought. She suspected something at the council meeting. She's wise and fair. If anyone would believe me, it's her. But how to contact Liza without her father knowing? The answer came unexpectedly. That evening, as Agness sat in her room, planning, the now familiar raven tapped at her window. The bird carried a note in its beak. Agness opened the window and took the message. Unfolding the paper, she read, "Meet me at the old chapel on the borderlands, tonight at midnight. Come alone. Liza." Agnes's heart sped up. How did Liza know? Or was it a trap? But she had no choice. This was a chance, and she had to take it. The old chapel stood on neutral ground between the pack's lands. Once it had hosted the sacred rituals of the werewolves, but now it was abandoned, visited only on rare occasions. Agness traveled there through the forest, in wolf form. Shifting always set her free, gave her a sense of power and liberation. Her wolf form was smaller than most males, but fast and agile, her fur the same red as her human hair. At the chapel, she shifted back to her human shape and donned the clothes she had carried in her jaws. The moon bathed the ancient stones in soft silver light. "You came?" A voice called from the shadow, and Liza Wise stepped out. "Good. I wasn't sure you'd get my message." "How did you know?" Agness asked cautiously. Liza smiled. "You don't live as long as I have by being blind, child. I saw the way you looked at the prisoner. I saw how fiercely you defended the right to check the seal. And I know that permanent seals don't need such frequent inspections." Agness froze. "You know the seal is temporary?" "I suspected." Liza stepped closer. "But I wasn't certain until now. Thank you for confirming." "Are you going to tell the council?" Agness challenged, her voice sharp. "That depends on why you did it." Liza studied her face. "Why risk everything for a prisoner? The enemy of your father?" Agness took a deep breath. The moment of truth. She could have lied, but something in Liza's wise eyes said the old wolf would see straight through it. "Because he's innocent," Agness said firmly. "My father framed him, with Lucas Swift. Caiden Wild is no traitor. The traitors are my father and Lucas." Silence hung between them for a long moment. Then Liza nodded. "I thought so, but suspicions are not evidence. Do you have proof?" Agness produced the copies of her father's notebook pages. "It's all here, every detail of the conspiracy, written in my father's hand." Liza took the pages and read. With every line, her face grew more serious. When she finished, she looked at Agness with a new respect. "You realize what bringing this evidence to the council means? Your father will be accused of conspiracy, stripped of his title as Alpha, banished, or worse." "I know." Agnes's voice shook, but she stood tall. He's my father, and I love him. But I can't let an innocent man suffer because of his ambition. I can't be complicit in this lie. Liza laid a hand on Agnes's shoulder. You're brave, child. Braver than most warriors I've known. It takes true courage to stand up to someone you love when they're wrong. What now? Agness asked. Now we use these documents. Liza tucked them away safely. But not yet. If we reveal them before the trial, Marcus and Lucas will have time to create excuses, destroy the originals. No, we wait for the trial itself. In front of the whole council, when they think their victory is certain, we strike. But the trial is the day after tomorrow. Agness frowned. We barely have time. We have enough, Liza assured her. Trust me, child. I've played these games longer than you've been alive. We'll save your Alpha. He's not mine. Agness started, but stopped under Liza's piercing gaze. Don't try to fool someone who can see hearts, the old wolf said gently. You love him, and if I'm not mistaken, he loves you. That complicates everything, but it also gives you strength. How can love give me strength in a situation like this? Agness asked bitterly. Because love is something worth fighting for? Liza smiled. It's what makes us strong when everything else falls apart. Remember that in the days ahead, you'll need that strength. They parted by the chapel. Agness ran back through the woods in her wolf form, her heart full of hope and fear both. The day after tomorrow, she thought, everything will be decided. Either we save Caiden, or we lose everything. The next day, Agness asked for permission to conduct one final seal check before the trial. Marcus reluctantly agreed, but insisted she be quick. In the dungeon, Caiden looked gaunt. Silver and lack of food had taken their toll. But when he saw Agness, his eyes lit up. I have the proof, she whispered, as she checked the seal under the watchful eyes of the guards. Tomorrow, at the trial, the truth comes out. Agness, it's dangerous. Caiden grasped her wrist. Your father? I know. She covered his hand with hers. But it's the only way. Trust me. I trust you more than anyone, Caiden whispered. But I'm afraid for you. If anything goes wrong, it won't. Agness forced herself to sound confident, though she trembled inside. Liza Wise is on our side. She'll help. She renewed the seal, pouring strength into it. Her fingers intertwined with his for just a moment, brief, but enough to share everything unspoken. Whatever happens tomorrow, Caiden murmured, so only she could hear. Know that you've changed me. You've shown me there's light even in the darkest times, that honor and kindness still exist. And you've shown me what it means to be brave, Agness replied, that sometimes you have to risk everything for what's right. They looked at each other through the bars, and in that look was more than 1,000 words. Until tomorrow, Agness said, rising. Until tomorrow, Caiden echoed, my fiery artist. Agness smiled at the nickname, touched her hair, and left the dungeon, carrying his words in her heart like a talisman. Chapter 8. The Trial. The day of the trial dawned gray and cold. Heavy clouds blanketed the sky, threatening a storm. Agness stood before the mirror, studying her reflection. She wore a simple, yet elegant, dark green dress that brought out the color of her eyes. Her fiery red hair was braided into a warrior's plait, just as her mother had taught her. Today I go to war, she thought, not with a sword, but with the truth. But it's still a war. Marcus waited for her downstairs, dressed in the ceremonial garb of an alpha, a black leather doublet with silver clasps and a cloak bearing the crest of the northern pack. Are you ready? He asked. Yes, father. Agness descended the stairs. Marcus gave her a long look. You look pale. Are you nervous? It's an important day, Agness answered evasively. For all of us. They made their way to the council hall accompanied by guards. Caiden was transported separately, in a closed carriage, still bound in silver shackles. The council hall was filled to capacity. Alongside the 12 council members, representatives from every pack were present to witness the trial of an alpha accused of treason. Agness took her place among the witnesses, one of her father's aides sitting beside her. Her eyes scanned the hall for Liza. The old wolf sat at her council seat, her face calm and inscrutable. The doors swung open, and Caiden was brought in. Agness barely suppressed a gasp. He looked terrible. Gaunt, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. The silver shackles had left deep burns on his wrists and ankles. But he held himself upright, his amber eyes blazing with unbroken fire. As he was led past, his gaze locked with Agness's for a moment. She saw resolve, strength, and something else. Trust. He was relying on her to save him. I won't fail you, she vowed silently. Caiden was placed at the center of the hall, in a circle traced with silver, a symbol of ancient justice. The presiding council member, Lauren Gray, stood and addressed the assembly. We are gathered today to judge Caiden Wild, Alpha of the Eastern Pack, accused of betraying our kind. This is the gravest of charges, demanding the gravest proof. Marcus North, as prosecutor, present your evidence. Marcus rose and delivered his speech. He spoke of duty and honor, of how Caiden had violated everything they stood for. Then he presented the letters, the forgeries meant to prove Caiden's collusion with the hunters. Agness listened, her fists clenched tight. Every word from her father felt like a knife to the heart. The man she loved, the man she had trusted all her life, was standing there and lying without hesitation. Next, a witness was called, a man from a neighboring pack who swore he had seen Caiden meeting with hunters in the forest. I saw it with my own eyes, the witness insisted. Alpha Wild handed them a map marking the territories of other packs. That's a lie, Caiden roared. I never met with hunters. The accused will have a chance to defend himself, Lauren said coldly. But first, we must hear all the accusations. Lucas Swift was then called, confirming the authenticity of the letters with confidence. The handwriting matches, Lucas declared. Without a doubt, this is Caiden Wild's hand. Agness saw several council members nodding, convinced by the evidence. Her father's plan was working. Just a little more, and Caiden would be found guilty. It's time, she thought, catching Liza's eye. The old wolf nodded ever so slightly. I have questions. Liza stood. About this evidence. Marcus frowned. What questions, Lady Liza? These letters. Liza picked one up. They are written on paper produced only in the Western lands. Why would the Alpha of the East use such paper for allegedly secret correspondence? Lucas blanched, but quickly recovered. Perhaps he used it on purpose to mislead us. Perhaps, Liza agreed. Or perhaps these letters were written by someone from the West, someone with access to that paper and motive to frame the Eastern Alpha. A ripple of whispers ran through the hall. Lucas clenched his jaw. These are baseless speculations. Then let's talk facts. Liza turned to the council. I conducted my own investigation and discovered something interesting. The witness who claimed to see Caiden with the hunters received a large sum of money a week before his testimony. The money came from the Western lands. The witness sprang up. That's a lie. Silence, Lauren thundered. Lady Liza, do you have proof of this? I do. Liza produced documents, Bank records from a western city, a transfer into this man's name, signed. She paused for effect. By Lucas Swift. The hall exploded in whispers and outcries. Lucas leapt to his feet. It's a forgery. Someone's trying to set me up. Interesting. Liza's voice was icy. Those are the exact words one could use about the letters that frame Caiden Wild. But there's more. She brought out copies of pages from Marcus's notebook. This is the journal of negotiations between Marcus North and Lucas Swift. It describes in detail how they framed Caiden Wild, how they forged the letters, bribed the witness. It's all written by Marcus North himself. A stunned silence fell. All eyes turned to Marcus, whose face had gone chalk white. Where did you get this? He hissed. That's not important, Liza answered. What matters is that it's true, and I have a handwriting expert ready to verify that it's yours, Marcus. Agness sat still, trying to keep her emotions in check, but inside her heart hammered wildly. Her father's gaze found hers, and she saw in his eyes understanding, pain, and fury. You, he whispered, you stole my diary. I saved an innocent man, Agness replied, rising to her feet. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to speak steadily. You framed him, Father. You betrayed everything Mother taught me, honor, justice, protecting the innocent. I couldn't just stand by. Marcus stared at her, emotions churning in his eyes until tears stung Agnes's own. You betrayed me, he said quietly. Your family, your pack. No, Agness shook her head. You betrayed everything we believed in. I just couldn't let you destroy an innocent life. Lauren struck his staff on the floor. Silence. Marcus North and Lucas Swift, you are charged with conspiracy against a fellow Alpha, forgery of evidence, and bribery of witnesses. These are grave offenses. What have you to say in your defense? Lucas tried to escape, but the council guards seized him. Marcus simply stood, looking at his daughter. I did it for you, he said at last. For your future, for the greatness of our pack. Greatness built on lies, and the blood of innocence is worth nothing, Agness said through her tears. Mother would have known that. It's a shame you've forgotten. Lauren called a recess for deliberation. Caiden was freed from his silver shackles and allowed to sit while the council withdrew to debate. Agness slipped through the crowd to him. When Caiden saw her, he stood, and before anyone could stop them, Agness found herself in his arms. You saved me, he whispered into her hair. You risked everything. You were worth it, she replied, pressing against his chest. You're worth everything. They stood together, ignoring the stunned looks around them, holding each other as though nothing else mattered. An hour later, the council returned. Lauren stood and announced the verdict. After reviewing all the evidence, the council has reached its decision. Caiden Wild is found innocent of all charges. The letters are forgeries. The witness's testimony is false. Relief flooded Agness. Caiden squeezed her hand. He had never let go. Marcus North and Lucas Swift, Lauren went on, are found guilty of conspiracy, forgery, and attempted unlawful seizure of territory. Marcus North is stripped of his title as Alpha of the Northern Pack. Lucas Swift loses his council seat and his title as Western Alpha. Both are exiled for 10 years, after which they may petition to return. Marcus did not resist as guards approached. Yet before he was led away, he looked at Agness. I hope, he said quietly, that one day you'll understand why I did this. And maybe, someday, you'll be able to forgive me. Agness did not answer. She couldn't. Tears streamed down her face. Words stuck in her throat. As her father was taken away, Agnes's knees buckled. Caiden caught her, holding her tight. I'm here, he whispered. I'm with you. You're not alone. I betrayed my father, Agness sobbed. You saved an innocent man, Caiden said firmly. You did what was right, even when it was hardest. That makes you a hero, Agness, not a traitor. A hero. Chapter 9. Consequences and New Beginnings. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of change. The Northern Pack was led by an interim alpha, a counselor loyal to the old traditions and to honesty. The Eastern and Northern Packs were joined by a new agreement of mutual support and protection. Agness remained in her home, but everything had changed. Some members of the pack looked at her with respect, the girl who had sacrificed her relationship with her father for the sake of justice. Others avoided her, seeing her as a traitor to the family. Caiden recovered from his weeks of captivity. The seal was removed. Agness performed the complex ritual that freed his wolf essence. It was painful for them both, but once it was done, Caiden could transform once again. They saw each other every day. Caiden came to the northern lands under the pretense of negotiations, but in truth, just to see Agness. They walked in the forests, talked for hours, healing the wounds the last weeks had left behind. "What will you do?" Caiden asked one evening as they sat by the lakeshore, watching the sunset. "Now that your father's banished? Now that everything's changed?" Agness gazed at the water. "I don't know. I'm a scar artist. That's my calling. But now, after I used my gift to deceive the system, some people don't trust me. They say if I lied once, I could lie again." Caiden took her hand. "You saved a life. That's not a lie. That's mercy. Anyone who can't see the difference is blind." "But they're right about one thing." Agness turned to him. "I can't stay here, not after all that's happened. Every stone, every wall reminds me of my father, of what I lost." "Then leave," Caiden said simply. Agness looked at him in surprise. "What?" Caiden stood and knelt before her. His amber eyes looked straight into her green ones, full of determination. And something else, a hope. "Agness North, scar artist, the girl with a heart of fire, you saved my life. You showed me what true bravery, true honor is. You gave up everything for the truth. And somewhere between the prison cell and this moment, I became hopelessly, madly in love with you." Agnes's heart thundered in her chest. She was sure he could hear it. "Caiden, come to the Eastern lands," he went on. "Not as a guest, but as their new alpha. Be my mate, my partner, my wife. Rule at my side. Build a new future with me. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice when you saved me." Tears welled in Agnes's eyes. This was everything she'd ever dreamed of, but never dared to hope for. "Will your pack accept me, the daughter of the man who tried to destroy you?" "My pack already knows your story." Caiden smiled. "About the girl who gave up everything for justice. The scar artist who used her gift to save, not to destroy. They want to meet you. Many already call you a hero." "And what if I can't be the alpha they need?" Agness whispered. "I've never led a pack before. I'm just a scar artist." Caiden stood and drew her close. "You're more than just a scar artist. You are a woman who sees the best in people, who fights for truth, even when it breaks her heart. You'll be an amazing alpha, and I'll be at your side, every step." Agness looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity, love, devotion. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "I'm afraid too," Caiden said, "but we'll be afraid together, and together we're stronger than any fear." Agness nodded slowly, a smile forming on her lips. "All right, yes, I'll be your mate, your partner, your alpha." Caiden let out a joyous howl and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. Agness laughed, and for the first time in weeks, her heart felt something close to happiness. When he set her down, Caiden leaned in and kissed Agness. It was their first real kiss, tender and passionate all at once, full of promises and hopes for the future. When they finally broke apart, Agness pressed her forehead to his. When? When will the ceremony be? When you're ready, Caiden answered. But my pack is waiting, and honestly, I don't want to wait too long either. Then in a week, Agness decided. I need to pack, say goodbye, prepare. In a week, Caiden agreed, kissing her again. News of the engagement spread quickly through the northern lands. The reactions were mixed. Some rejoiced this would strengthen the alliance between the packs. Others grumbled that the daughter of a traitor didn't deserve happiness. But Agness no longer cared what others thought. She had made her decision, and it was right. The day before leaving, Agness visited the prison where her father was held before his exile. Marcus sat in his cell, aged over the past weeks. His hair was now completely gray. When he saw his daughter, he stood. Agness, you came to say goodbye? Yes. She approached the bars. Tomorrow I'll be banished with you. But I'm going to the eastern lands. I'm marrying Caiden Wild. Marcus looked at her for a long time, then slowly nodded. So you found happiness with the man I tried to destroy. Ironic, isn't it? Father? Agness took a deep breath. I can't forgive what you've done. Not now. Maybe never. But I want you to know, I still love you. Part of me always will. The part that remembers who you used to be. The father who taught me justice and honor. Marcus came to the bars, his eyes brimming with tears. I lost my way, daughter. When your mother died, something broke in me. I became obsessed with strength, thinking it was the only way to protect what was left. But in the end, I lost the most precious thing of all. You. You haven't lost me completely. Agness reached through the bars and Marcus took her hand. Once your exile is over, once you find yourself again, the doors of the eastern lands will be open to you. Not as an alpha, but as a guest, as the grandfather of my future children. Marcus squeezed her hand, tears streaming down his cheeks. You're too kind to me, after all I've done. Mother taught me that vengeance destroys the soul. Agness smiled through her own tears. That forgiveness is not weakness, but strength. I can't forgive you now, but I can give you a chance to earn it. If you want it. I do, Marcus whispered. I swear to you, daughter, I'll spend my years in exile working on myself. I'll become the man you could be proud of. The man your mother would be proud of. They stood like that for a long time, holding hands through the bars, a father and daughter divided by iron and mistakes, but still bound by love. As Agness left, Marcus called after her. Agness, be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you, even if my ways were wrong. I will, she promised. Goodbye, father. Until we meet again, daughter, Marcus said. In 10 years, I'll be waiting. Chapter 10, The Ceremony of Two Hearts. The week flew by in a flurry of preparations. Agness packed her belongings, few but precious. Her scar artist's tools, books of ancient lore, a handful of dresses, and her mother's jewelry. Liza Wise helped organize the ceremony. By tradition, when an alpha chose a mate from another pack, the ceremony was held on neutral ground to symbolize unity between peoples. On the day of the ceremony, Agness woke at dawn. She stood at her window for the last time, gazing at the familiar landscape of the northern lands. It had been her home all her life, and she was leaving it. But I'm not losing my home, she reminded herself. I am finding a new one, with the man I love. Liza helped her dress. The gown was stunning, white, embroidered with silver thread, with a long, trailing train. Most striking was the cloak of wolf fur, the traditional mark of the alpha's mate. The fur was russet, nearly matching the color of her own hair. "Your mother wore a cloak like this," Liza said, fastening it. "She was a wonderful alpha female, just wise, strong. And you're just like her, Agness. Never doubt that." "I'll try to live up to her memory," Agness whispered, touching the cloak. Liza turned her to face the mirror. "Look at yourself. You're not just a girl hiding behind her gift. You're an alpha, a leader, a woman who'll change the world." Agness studied her reflection. Her fiery hair hung loose down her shoulders and back, a symbol of freedom and strength. Her green eyes shone with resolve. In the white dress and russet cloak, she truly looked like an alpha. "I'm ready," she said. The ceremony was held in the old chapel on the borderlands, the same place where Agness had met Liza weeks ago. Now, the once abandoned building was adorned with flowers and ribbons. Candles glowed everywhere, creating a magical atmosphere. Members of both packs gathered to witness the union. The Eastern Pack watched Agness with curiosity and respect. The Northerners observed with mixed feelings, but their presence spoke for itself. Caiden waited by the altar, dressed in the ceremonial black leather of the Eastern Alpha, the golden crest embroidered on his chest. His dark hair was slicked back, and his amber eyes blazed as he watched Agness walk down the aisle. Beside him stood his beta, a tall man named Thorin, who had served Caiden since he became Alpha. Thorin smiled at Agness in encouragement. Agness walked alone. She had no father to walk her down the aisle. Yet she didn't feel alone. Every step brought her closer to Caiden, closer to their future, and it lent her strength. When she reached the altar, Caiden offered his hand, and she took it. His fingers closed firmly around hers, radiating warmth and support. Lauren Gray, as the eldest council member, officiated the ceremony. "We are gathered here beneath the moon and stars, under the eyes of our ancestors, to witness the union of two hearts, two souls, two alphas. Caiden Wild, Alpha of the Eastern Pack, and Agness North, Scar Artist, have come to bind their lives forever." He turned to Caiden. "Caiden Wild, do you take Agness North as your chosen, your mate, the alpha female of your pack? Do you vow to protect her, honor her, and love her until the end of your days?" "I do." Caiden's voice was firm and unwavering. "With my life, my honor, my pack. Agness is my chosen, my mate, the other half of my soul." Lauren turned to Agness. "Agness North, do you take Caiden Wild as your chosen, your mate, the alpha of your pack? Do you vow to protect him, honor him, and love him until the end of your days?" Agness looked into Caiden's amber eyes, seeing all their love, devotion, and every future yet to come. "I do. With my life, my honor, my gift. Caiden is my chosen, my mate, the other half of my soul." Lauren took a silver ribbon and bound their entwined hands. "By the power vested in me by the council, by the ancient tradition of our peoples, I declare you mates, bound forever. What the moon has joined, let no one part." Caiden drew Agness to him and kissed her, a long, deep kiss that made the gathered guests applaud and howl in approval. When they broke the kiss, Caiden whispered so that only she could hear. "Welcome home, my fiery alpha." "Home," Agness repeated, smiling through joyful tears. "I'm finally home." The celebration lasted all night. Both packs feasted, danced, rejoicing in the union. Agness met members of the Eastern Pack, and their welcome was warm. "Our alpha never stopped talking about you," Thorin, Caiden's beta, said with a smile. "The girl who risked everything to save his life. We owe you, Lady Agness." Just Agness, she corrected. I don't want formality. I want to be part of this family. You already are, Thorin assured her. Ever since you placed that temporary seal, Caiden told us everything. You risked it all to give him a chance. That makes you a hero in our eyes. As the night wore on, Agness found herself relaxing. These people accepted her, not as the enemy's daughter, but as their alpha, the savior of their leader. When the moon reached its zenith, Caiden took her hand. Come, there's some place I want to show you. They slipped away from the celebration, unnoticed. Caiden led her through the forest, deep into the eastern lands, until they reached a glade flooded with moonlight. In the center was a house, not a grand manor like her father's, but a cozy cottage of stone and wood, with warm light glowing from the windows. This is our home, Caiden said. I didn't want us to live in the big Alpha's manor. Too much formality, not enough privacy. Here, it's just us, our sanctuary. Agness looked at the house, her heart brimming with love. It's perfect. Caiden scooped her into his arms, making her squeal in surprise. Tradition says the Alpha must carry his chosen over the threshold of their first home together. He carried her inside. It was warm and inviting, an ample hearth, soft furniture, shelves full of books. Most notably, on one wall, were her scar artist's tools, neatly arranged, ready to use. You kept my studio, she whispered. Of course, Caiden set her down. You're a scar artist. It's part of who you are, and the Eastern Pack needs your gift as much as any other. But now you'll use it rightly, justly. Agness turned to him. Caiden, I love you, he interrupted. I loved you from the moment you chose conscience over duty, when you risked everything to give me a chance, when your green eyes looked at me with compassion, not judgment. He stepped close, wrapping his arms around her. I promise to spend every day showing you how much I love you. I promise to protect you, support your choices, stand by you even when the world falls apart. I promise to be worthy of the sacrifice you made. Agness touched his face, seeing sincerity in his amber eyes. And I promise to love you every day. I promise to be the best Alpha I can be. I promise to use my gift to heal, not to harm. And I promise we'll build a life filled with love, honor, and justice. Caiden kissed her, gently at first, then with growing passion. Agness answered with all her heart, giving him all her love and trust. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Caiden took her hand and led her upstairs to the bedroom. Welcome home, my love, he whispered. Welcome to our new life. Home, Agness repeated, and in that word was her whole world. Epilogue. 1 year later, Agness stood on the balcony of her home, gazing out over the eastern lands bathed in the morning sun. A year had passed since the ceremony, a year that had been difficult, full of challenges, but also filled with love and growth. She had become the alpha female she never imagined she could be. The Eastern Pack had completely accepted her, seeing not just the mate of their alpha, but a wise leader. Her gift as a scar artist was now used only justly. She punished only those whose guilt was proven beyond doubt. But her greatest achievement was working toward the unification of the eastern and northern lands. Slowly but surely, old wounds were healing. The new alpha of the Northern Pack turned out to be a prudent leader, and together with Caiden, they built a solid alliance. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and Agness leaned back against the familiar chest. What are you thinking about? Caiden asked, kissing her neck. How much has changed? Agness turned in his arms. A year ago, I had no idea what to do with my life, and now And now you're an alpha, a leader, a wife, and soon. Caiden placed a hand over her belly, where a small curve had just begun to show. A mother. Agness smiled, covering his hand with her own. I'm scared. What if I'm not a good mother? What if our child inherits my gift and can't handle it? Then we'll help them. Caiden kissed her forehead. Together, we'll teach our child what you've learned, that a gift is a responsibility, that power must be used wisely, that honor and justice matter more than personal gain. You always know what to say. Agness pressed close to him. Only because you showed me the way, Caiden replied. They stood that way, embracing and watching the sun rise over their lands. Somewhere far away, Marcus spent his years of exile, seeking redemption. He wrote to Agness every month, and in his letters, she saw glimpses of the father she once knew. Maybe one day they would be fully reconciled. Maybe he would meet his grandchild. But even if not, Agness knew she had made the right choice. I got a letter from Liza yesterday, she said. She wants me to join the council. She says they need young voices, fresh perspectives. And what did you say? Caiden asked. That I'd think about it. Agness looked at him. But it's a big responsibility, with a child on the way. We'll manage, Caiden said firmly. If you want to do it, I'll support you, completely. You'll be great on the council, just like you are at everything you do. Agness rose onto her toes and kissed him. What did I do to deserve you? You risked everything for a stranger, Caiden replied. Then we both deserve each other. Agness smiled. And that's perfect. At that moment, a raven landed on the balcony railing. Agness recognized it, the same raven that had helped them send messages during the conspiracy. Hello, old friend, she said, offering her hand. The bird hopped onto it. What have you brought us this time? But the raven had no message. It simply cawed as if in greeting, then flew off into the sky. That's odd, Caiden remarked. Not odd. Agness watched as the raven disappeared into the distance. He's just checking that we're happy. Even nature celebrates our love. Caiden laughed and swept her up into his arms, making her laugh in surprise. Then let's give nature even more reason to celebrate. We've got a few hours before the Elders' Council. How do you want to spend them, my fiery alpha? Agness wrapped her arms around his neck, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. I have a few ideas, my wild alpha. He carried her back inside, their laughter echoing in the morning air. The door closed behind them, leaving the world and its troubles outside. 5 years later, the sun was setting over the eastern lands, painting the sky gold and purple. Laughter rang through the garden outside Agness and Caiden's home. Mama! Mama! Watch what I can do! 4-year-old Elsa ran to her mother, her red hair, a perfect copy of Agnes's, flying behind her like a small flame. Agness looked up from her book and smiled at her daughter. Trotting beside Elsa was her younger brother Torin, a 3-year-old boy with their father's amber eyes and dark hair. What can you do, sunshine? Agness knelt down. Elsa held out her hand, and a soft glow appeared on her palm, the first sign of the scar artist's gift. I can see light, the girl whispered in awe. Like you said, Mom, the inner light in people. Agnes's heart squeezed with mixed emotions. Pride. Her daughter had inherited the gift. Fear, because the gift carried such responsibility. But above all, determination to prepare Elsa better than she herself had been. That's wonderful, darling. Agness hugged her daughter. But remember what I told you. This gift isn't just power. It's responsibility. A promise to use it wisely and kindly. I know, Mama, Elsa nodded earnestly. You told me the story, how you saved Papa by using your gift differently. I can transform too, Torin piped up, not wanting to be left out. Papa says I'll soon be able to turn into a big wolf like him. Agness laughed and hugged her son. Yes, my brave little wolf, soon. But first, you need to learn to control your power, just like your sister is learning to control hers. A family moment without me? Came a familiar voice as Caiden appeared from the house, carrying a tray of food. Time hadn't changed him. He was still strong and handsome, though silver now streaked his hair. The children squealed with joy and ran to their father. Caiden set down the tray and scooped them both up, holding them easily, even as they grew bigger. Papa, I showed Mama my gift, Elsa declared proudly. I know, Princess. Caiden kissed her forehead. I saw from the window. Your mother and I are both very proud of you. Of both of you. He set the children down. Now go wash your hands. Grandma Liza will be here soon for dinner, and you know how she hates it when you're late. The children ran off, leaving their parents alone. Caiden pulled Agness close. You're worried, he said simply, about Elsa's gift. I remember how hard it was for me, Agness admitted, leaning into his chest. The burden of such a gift. Knowing one wrong choice could ruin someone's life. But you weren't alone when it mattered, Caiden reminded her. You had your conscience, your courage, and your love. Elsa has those too. Plus, she's growing up in a family that will teach her the right values. She has you, the best teacher anyone could hope for. Agness reached up to kiss him. How do you always find the right words? Years of practice. Caiden grinned. By the way, I have some news. A letter from your father arrived. Agness tensed. Marcus had returned from exile 2 years ago. He'd settled in a small village on the border of the northern lands, living quietly, working with the local community. He wrote regularly, but Agness was still uncertain about full reconciliation. What does he say? She asked. He's asking if he can visit. Caiden pulled a letter from his pocket. He wants to meet his grandchildren. Says he understands if you're not ready, but he hopes. Agness took the letter and read it. Her father's handwriting, once firm and confident, now trembled, a sign of age and perhaps remorse. The words were simple, but sincere. My dear daughter, 7 years have passed since I lost the right to call myself your father. 7 years spent reflecting on my mistakes, working on myself, trying to become the man your mother could have been proud of. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I ask for a chance to meet my grandchildren, to see the fruits of the love you and Caiden built on the ruins of my hatred. I am old now, Agness. The years weigh heavy, and I would like to see, even once, the family I nearly destroyed, but which survived and thrived despite my actions. If you say no, I will understand. But if you find room in your heart for an old fool, I will be forever grateful. With love and remorse, your father, Marcus. Agness folded the letter, tears filling her eyes. Caiden hugged her tighter. Whatever you decide, I support you. If you want him to come, he'll come. If not, I'll send the kindest refusal I can. You don't mind? Agness looked at him. After all he did to you? He's your father, Caiden said simply. And from his letters these years, I do think he's changed. People deserve second chances, Agness. You once told me that. Agness thought about it. Part of her was still angry at her father, still remembered the pain of betrayal. But another part, the one that inherited her mother's kindness, remembered how he used to be, remembered the love he'd shown her as a child. He can come, she said at last, but on one condition. He'll only meet the children if he promises never to tell them about his past. I'll tell them myself when they're ready. Until then, let them know him as just their grandpa. Fair. Caiden kissed her temple. I'll write to him today. Marcus arrived a week later. Agness watched from the window as he stepped from the carriage, barely recognizing him. The man who was once a powerful alpha now looked old and stooped, with hair entirely silver and a face lined with age. But when he looked up at the house, she saw the same love in his eyes that she remembered from her childhood. Agness went out to greet him, Caiden next to her, his hand steady on her shoulder. Father, she said simply. Agness. Marcus's voice trembled. You're beautiful and happy. I see it in your eyes. They stood, separated by years and pain. Then Agness took a step, and another. And suddenly, she was embracing her father for the first time in 7 years. Marcus hugged her, and she felt his tears on her shoulder. Forgive me, he whispered again and again. I forgive you, Agness murmured, and only by saying it aloud did she realize it was true. Somewhere between the letters and the long years, she had let go of her anger. I haven't forgotten, but I forgive. They stood that way for a long moment, healing old wounds with simple closeness. Then Marcus turned to Caiden. Caiden Wild, the man I once tried to destroy. I can't ask for your forgiveness. You already have it, Caiden interrupted. Any man who can make Agness cry tears of joy instead of pain deserves a second chance in my book. He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus shook it. Thank you, the old wolf rasped, for making my daughter happy, for forgiving me this chance. Grandpa? Came a child's call, and Elsa ran out of the house, Toran on her heels. The children stopped shyly at the stranger. Marcus knelt, tears spilling again. You must be Elsa and Toran. Your mother wrote about you. I'm your grandpa Marcus. Elsa, the bolder of the two, stepped closer. Her green eyes, so like Agnes's, studied the old wolf. You have sad eyes, she said with childlike honesty. But they're kind. Mama says I can see people's inner light. Yours was dark, but now it's getting brighter. Marcus trembled at her words. You're very wise for your age, little one. She inherited her mother's gift, Agness said, laying her hands on Elsa's shoulders. And I hope her wisdom too. Emboldened by his sister, Toran stepped forward. Can you really turn into a wolf? Papa says you used to be a strong alpha. Once, Marcus replied. That was a long time ago. Now I'm just an old wolf who wants to know his wonderful grandchildren. The children accepted him with the ease of youth. By day's end, Elsa was showing him her garden, while Toran demonstrated how high he could jump. Agness stood on the porch, leaning into Caiden. Do you think I did the right thing? Look at him. Caiden nodded toward Marcus, who was laughing at something Elsa had said. Look at the joy in his eyes. Look at the children who now have a grandpa. Yes, my love, you did the right thing. You always do when you listen to your heart. That night, after the children were asleep and Marcus was settled in the guest room, Agness and Caiden sat in their bedroom. I got another letter today, Agness said, from the council. And? Caiden turned to her, too. They're offering me a position as senior advisor for justice. Agness showed him the letter. It would mean more travel, more time away from the family, but also, you could change the laws about your gift. Caiden finished. Make new rules for scar artists. Fairer, more humane. Exactly, Agness nodded. I could make sure that what happened to me, that choice between conscience and duty, won't happen to Elsa or any other scar artist in the future. Caiden squeezed her hands. Then you should accept. But the kids, our family. We'll be here when you return, Caiden assured her. Agness, you've spent the last 5 years being an amazing mother and alpha. But I know part of you still wants more, wants to change the world. And I'll never be the reason you give up on that dream. You never were. Agness touched his face. You are my support, my strength. Then use that strength. Caiden kissed her hand. Go to the council, change the laws, make the world better. We'll manage here. The kids have me, their grandpa now, the whole pack. We'll miss you, but we'll also be proud of you. Agness pressed her forehead to his. What did I do to deserve a husband like you? You saved my life, Caiden whispered, and you keep saving it every day with your love. Thank you for staying with me throughout this story. If you enjoyed the tale, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'm really interested to hear your opinions and learn about your favorite moments. Discuss the plot, ask questions, and share your ideas for future stories. Your support, comments, likes, and subscriptions are incredibly important for the channel's growth and inspire me to keep writing. Let's create a cozy book-loving space together where everyone can find something special. Thank you for listening, and see you soon in the next stories.